Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice to get you through the long night. Today is episode 4 of Overwatched, and today's special guest is Chloe and Lyanna from the podcast Girls Gone Canon. I mean, they do a lot of stuff, and I stand for Chloe and her boyfriend's howling in the shower cosplay. Just saying, just putting that out there.
Girl.
It's
hey,
goals.
girl. Yeah, it's pretty fun. He's right.
So today's episode is Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things. And I feel like that's maybe an overall theme for the story.
Yeah.
That's mostly what we have left, right? Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things.
Broken things especially.
And they're
Yes.
gonna repair the whole world.
Oh, and I don't want to leave Lyanna out. Sorry, Lyanna, I stand for the way that you stand for strong bellwise.
That tells me that you do know what we talk about on Girls Gone Canon.
See?
She's probably gonna yell, "Get a job at Littlefinger" during this episode.
No, I'm not gonna do that. So in episode 4, we start out and Bran is dreaming in the yard at Winterfell, and he's being led into the crypts by a raven. And you have any thoughts about that off the jump?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because he is getting led into the crypts. He's down by the stone direwolves, and we see later on when he gets his mind opened by the three-eyed raven, he sees all those visions of, for example, his Aunt Lyanna and certain things. So I think it's a really interesting foreshadowing and just really thematically kind of spooky and kind of like, I don't know, the foreshadowing is cool for what we see in season 6 and 7.
I also wonder that because the three-eyed raven is leading Bran kind of into the crypts, do you think the weirwood roots extend into the crypts? Do you think they're down there?
I think that like the tunnels in general are probably. I think the tunnels go all over the world. Do you mean like the weirwood?
Like the
Winterfell?
Yeah, like the weirwood of Winterfell. Like the Crypts of Winterfell kind of remind me of Bloodraven's cave beyond the wall with like tunnels. It's like tunnels and all these layers that you don't know about, and the collapse layer and all of that. So I was wondering, like, is the tree, the heart tree of Winterfell, are those roots kind of like, is that tree kind of sitting on top of what would have been the Children's Hollow Hill that is now the Stark Crypts?
Ooh.
Probably. I bet they probably at least grow under, especially because there's all that like weirdness about how Winterfell's built on hot springs too.
Yeah.
So like that water probably is what makes the weirwood grow, which kind of reminds me of like very like in The Magicians in Fillory, there's the magical stream of water, or in like Tuck Everlasting. So maybe those springs are actually like magical. You know, it is a fantasy story. I mean,
yeah, totally. And you know, Bloodraven's cave has like a river in it, right? Like a river that kind of I think it has weird looking fish with like weird looking eyes, and it supposedly flows to the end of the world or the middle of the earth or something like that.
We need Joe Magician for this. We messed up.
Yeah.
He's the Weirwood King.
He is. He owns the Weirwood throne.
Yeah. He sits atop it.
Yeah, but I think the premises of the scene is basically the show trying to like tell us, you know, there's something more not only to the crypts, but there's something more to this raven, because when it looks at Bran, it has 3 eyes, and Bran freaks out like and wakes up from his dream.
Look, we've all done psychedelics, Bran, okay? We've all done psychedelics.
It's all right.
So the next scene is basically Old Nan's in there with Bran, and Theon comes in there like, we have company, you need to come with me, and he calls Hodor to come and get him. And Theon's basically a dutiful servant to House Stark at this time. And Bran basically doesn't want to go.
Yeah, it's the most adorable but also frustrating little kid thing ever. Bran's like, I don't want to go. Which, I get it. I would be pretty mad about doing anything if I was like, I can't walk anymore.
Yeah,
absolutely. I probably would just stay in bed too. Let's be real.
Yeah.
It is an improvement though from the episode prior where he was like, I just want to die.
Yeah, absolutely.
True.
Like, he's warming up to this whole cripple thing.
The next scene, Tyrion and Robb are together. Well, Tyrion is coming to Winterfell, and Robb is basically not wanting him there. Came there because he was on the road going south, but he came there to bring Bran these instructions to build a saddle. I love this scene in the books, so I'm going to just say in the books this scene is better because you have the wolves are not here for Tyrion, and Robb has an unsheathed sword sitting out, and it's a lot more intense than in this scene. But you still get the idea that they don't like each other anymore.
Yeah, Robb does come off just like an asshole in this scene, and it kind of makes you go man, Tyrion's kind of cool. Why are you acting like that? As the watcher, Tyrion didn't do anything wrong. You're he's all right. He just likes to drink and have sex. Let him live his life. And
right.
Robb's all he's the cool one, he's the one that you should be nice to, Robb. And Robb's all I'm the Lord, and I'm mad, and you shouldn't be here. And Tyrion, you can tell he's just really affronted too. He's what? But in the books, with the wolves prowling around, and that's it really gets that menacing feel. So it wasn't as menacing. It didn't feel like he was this small man in a big chamber in Winterfell of talking to these people that hate him.
Yeah, and if you put yourself in Robb's shoes, it's kind of why are you coming here asking? They suspect.
In my house?
Yeah, they suspect
in front of my
the Lannisters did something, and you're coming here asking Bran, what do you remember? So it's kind of suspect. I do understand, and I also think that he's young, and he really doesn't know a lord's courtesy and all those kind of things. He really doesn't understand how serious it could get if something had happened to Tyrion in Winterfell.
I think that it's interesting because I actually forgot that the direwolves were supposed to be in that scene in the books, but I was trying to look. There's a table there, but I was trying to look. I was is there a sword on Robb's lap or not? But I couldn't really tell. And I kind of wonder if the change in the show has to do with the fact that that scene comes off a lot more antagonistic in A Game of Thrones, maybe because, in the 1993 letter that George R. R. Martin originally wrote of the way that the story was supposed to go, Tyrion was supposed to be someone who razed Winterfell to the ground, who basically did to Winterfell what Theon Greyjoy eventually does, and maybe the show was well, that doesn't end up happening, so it doesn't make sense to make that scene as tense as it is in the books.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and that's probably why it was, because that scene was intense. It really was.
Yeah. And this was, I think what was really cool was that it showed Robb being the Lord. I think that was the big point of it, right? That was Robb's the Lord here. Now you can tell he's playing the Lord while his parents are gone.
Yeah. And he actually, I know Robb gets a lot of shit, but he actually is kind of good. When he first steps in, he's really young, and he's just thrown into this, you're the Lord of Winterfell now. Somebody tried to kill his brother. His mom's gone. His brother is a cripple. He has another infant brother there. And then his sisters are gone. His dad's gone. His brother's gone to the wall. So for him to be able to thrive in that position says a lot about Robb.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because we get a lot of exposition in Ned's chapters in the books where he's thinking, this was all meant for Brandon, his older brother that died because of the Mad King. So Robb and Jon kind of have a lot of that. And Robb, obviously, he's now, he's still kicking. He's doing great right now. And he really steps into that role because this role was meant for him. This is his birthright. He's the next person that would have Winterfell if his dad goes. And so as he's kind of getting thrust into working on it before his dad dies, and then his dad dies, and he's well, I guess I'm the Lord now, I have to do this. And later on, when Jon is kind of in that position, it's interesting because Jon is such a dutiful person. He's not the same kind of I'm ready to rule, I'm ambitious. Robb, was meant for it.
Yeah.
Jon was not.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think Jon's going to struggle in the future. And I think he's going to struggle in season 8 with
he's got a couple things working against him.
Yeah, and I think I don't think he's going to even though he's the legitimate heir to the throne, I don't think he's going to want anything to do with it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be like, I never asked for this. Take this cup away from me.
Yeah, so totally Ned. It's gonna totally be Uncle Ned.
There's something that, speaking of the way that Rob's asserting power, that I thought was interesting of what Tyrion does in this scene. He kind of pushes back a little bit on the power dynamics because Maester Luwin, obviously affiliated with Winterfell, starts saying something and informing Tyrion of something, but Tyrion just silences him. And he's just reasserting that power dynamic, even if he isn't exactly completely welcome there, in order to be able to interact with Bran as an equal and do the nice thing that he wanted to do.
Yeah.
The other thing, this scene that we didn't grab on is, let's talk about that saddle for a hot second, right? Like, that saddle, the plans for the saddle, that totally has to come back in play, right? Like, that has to come back in a big way for, like, Tyrion to ride a dragon, or Bran, or someone's gonna ride a dragon with that thing.
Yeah. And it's a show-only thing, but Bran has a bow in every one of his dreams in the show. Every one of them. When he meets Jojen, when this dream that opened up this episode, he has a bow. When we're first introduced to him, he has a bow. So I'm like, I feel like this bow and this saddle is important. And I think it's the next episode. Maester Luwin tells him, he says, I'll never be able to shoot an arrow again. And Maester Luwin says, if the saddle Lord Tyrion built you, or if the saddle Lord Tyrion designed works, you will be. Dothraki boys learn how to shoot from horseback at such a young age. And then we know, like, that's what Blood Raven.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh my god, it's such a good catch, because I was thinking the same thing.
Wait, are you guys thinking about them weirwood bows too?
Yes.
Yup.
And who was the guy that had him? Brandon? Wasn't he Brandon Snow? So I was kind of wondering, like, if the show knows something, if they're trying to foreshadow something that they know that's going to happen later, because he always has a bow. I think it's about 4 different times he has a bow, and I'm just like, okay, what is he doing? So, and in the Tales of Dunk and Egg, there's a quote where it says that Bloodraven's arrows were guided by sorcery. So I'm like,
sword, right?
Yeah, that's sworn sword. But dude, and then Bloodraven, and then Bran, and then yo.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if Bran's gonna come, if all of this is gonna circle back.
Yes, I think it is. I think you are so right, girl.
That's an amazing catch.
It's a great catch.
It was one of my very first theories. Editing on that video was not good. I'm gonna link it in this video.
Yeah, you better. I'm gonna post it everywhere I go. I'm gonna literally like print out screenshots of it and just hand it out on corners. Have you heard the good word?
The hashtag nice catch.
Do you think the Tyrion and Theon scene, what do you think that was a setup for?
Well, it was an exposition drop. That was like a huge exposition drop. It's the very first mention in the show about the Greyjoy Rebellion, and it kind of explains why Theon is there, and he kind of sets a stage for those feelings of Theon being like a hostage, and for us to go, oh, when in season 2 Theon kind of turns, you get that, you understand it, and you can see that enmity for this family that is like kind of his family, but also his captors building up. And Tyrion, it was a little like for a bit there. I mean, it also makes it so you get to like hear about the sex workers too and introduce that idea, I guess, more, and gives Raz an introduction. But there was so much setup in that scene, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. So Tyrion is basically saying that he admires Theon's loyalty to his captors. He says it's touching. And we know that there's like a whole lot of, I think, foreshadowing in this episode that we'll go back to it again later in the episode, that Theon is going to be a traitor.
Oh, there's a lot of great groundwork in that character stuff, like you were saying just now about Theon, and also even with Tyrion, like repeating the exact same thing that Tyrion did in the Winterfell room, where he was being a little sassy with Bran, where Bran's like, I'm not a cripple. And he's like, oh, then I'm not a dwarf. My father will be so happy. And like he does the exact same kind of thing to Theon just now, where he's like, oh, you're master. And Theon's like, it's not my master. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. Of course not.
Right.
It's a similar tactic.
He's calling it as he sees it.
Yeah, he did the same with Jon. Like, hey, bastard, aren't you Ned Stark's bastard? So I do like that.
He keeps it real. Very down to earth.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite characters.
His haircut's also great in this episode. Just want to throw that out there.
Season one Tyrion.
So later on, we get to meet one of my favorite characters, Samwell Tarly.
Yes.
Yes.
He arrives to the wall, and the mean guy, says that he's there to take the black.
Oh my god, can we call him only the mean guy from now on?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know his name. I didn't hear his name. I want to say his name. I thought he was Chet, but I'm not sure. So I just said, I don't know who he is. I don't know.
It's Alistair. Is that who you're talking about?
No.
Or what?
The mean boy. Not yes, I know who you're talking about now. The mean boy.
What's his name?
It's like Rast.
It's Rast.
Is that
Rast.
Rast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Rast.
Okay.
Sorry, they're just all really mean.
They are.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that mean boy.
Which mean one are you talking about, Gray?
Okay, so Alistair Thorne is the mean guy, and Rast is the mean boy.
Okay.
And
Differentiate.
they all walk in and they're like, on Wednesdays we wear pink.
Oh my God.
Every day we wear black.
Yes. Oh my god.
Sam is kind of like, I feel really bad for him either way, both books and show, but I feel like the show like kind of characterized him a little, you know, like I felt like I didn't feel as bad for him in the show as I did in the books. In the show, he's just like a fat nerd getting punched, you know, like in the books, like you're like, oh man, like he's had a hard life and he's fat nerd getting punched. Like then I felt worse, I guess, but I still feel bad. I just feel worse because, you know, the context is a little better, but introducing him this way, you're just like, you're a pathetic sap, dude. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I felt bad for Sam because I really like him, and I feel like he's a really relatable character. And I feel like what makes him relatable, it's corny, but all heroes don't wear capes.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Sometimes they wear cloaks. Black cloaks.
And that's what's so important when you eventually will get to when, you know, he kills the White Walker, you know, that's so big. It's big, man. 'Cause it's like, Sam, you're a hero, dude. Like you did the biggest hero crap, and you didn't even mean to.
So in Vaes Dothrak, the only statue that we have is 2 horses, which I was kind of depressed at because I would like to see. I would like to see all of the gods from different places lining the streets, but I got it.
Oh yeah,
They didn't have a budget. They didn't have a budget this season. Yeah, it was season 1. It wasn't a cultural phenomenon yet.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like so Viserys and Daenerys are like, first of all, they couldn't be any more different. But Daenerys has to like check him over and over again. Like she is putting him in check. The whole time I'm like talking about Viserys, I just have Jorah's wife. Oh my God. That's my notes.
That's like, you can tell how much Jorah ain't shit to me because I'm just like, who? Oh yeah, forgot about him.
Yeah.
You don't like Jorah at all?
No, I don't. I'm not into Jorah because he's creepy and he's a slaver, and it's just too much for me, man. It's like, he oversteps his boundaries with Daenerys. Like that's your queen. Like Asha Greyjoy in the book says in a scene, she goes like, I am your queen, not your wife. Remember that. Like Daenerys is not his wife. Like you came to serve her, dog. You took a second chance at life and you're disrespectful and you overstep your bounds, and she's a girl and you're this old creepy man and you're trying to make out with her. Like enough's enough. Chill out. And then like you're gonna act like you're high and mighty when you get found out for betraying her. Like, and then you're gonna sit there like, well, Ned Stark didn't like me and he got rid of me. And I'm like, you slaved. And then he's like, well, Daenerys didn't like me. And it's like, well, because, you know, you like spied on her. Like, you did treason. Like, you committed treason.
Yeah, Daenerys confronted him about being a slaver in
Which
that
I'm
scene.
so glad of, because she should have.
Yeah.
I guess for context, if people care or want to know, his wife was Lyness Hightower.
I think she was beautiful. She was probably beautiful. And he probably reached too high to try to get her. You know what I mean? And could you imagine? Could you imagine living on Bear Island? I couldn't imagine.
Can you imagine living with a man who takes no responsibility for anything? I cannot.
I've done it, ladies. Yeah. I've done it, and like, don't ever do that. Like, like, I understand, girl. Like, go ahead, girl. Get down.
That's what it's like living with Jorah Mormont. And Danny's like, yeah, you were slaving though. When he's like trying to blame it all on Ned Stark. That's who you have to be married to. No wonder.
Yeah,
it's kind of like because also she's all like, well, that's the usurper's dogs. Like, fuck Ned Stark, and he's like, yeah, I hate him too because he did this awful thing to me. And she's like, yeah, but you slaved. Like, Jorah, that's not even the same.
She was checking people left and right in that episode.
Mm-hmm. She's coming into her queenship slowly. She's like, yeah, I could be a Khaleesi. I could be a Khaleesi. All right.
Scene is Viserys and Doria.
I honestly forgot which handmaiden this was.
Yeah, she was like, which one is it? I was like, I think it's Doria. Like, don't make me question myself.
Yeah. So basically, she's in the bathtub with Viserys, and they're talking about basically dragons. And but what I wrote down in my notes, which I thought was interesting, was the things that the things that Doria says that she saw.
Mm-hmm.
So she says that she's seen a man from Ashai with a full dagger of dragon glass. What's that about? And then she says she's seen a man who could change his face the way other men change his clothes. A pirate who wore his weight in gold and a ship of sails with colored silk.
Yep.
So, like, when I'm first thinking about it, why does someone from Ashai have a full dagger of dragon glass? Just because it's pretty?
Well, they say Ashai, the buildings, it's very H.P. Lovecraft. The buildings are made of, like, dark, slick, oily, like, rock, which is... I mean, generally, dragon glass in the books is described as that. So, like, you're thinking, is Ashai made of dragon glass? And we don't know. No one knows because no one's, like, gone to Ashai and come back, you know, and just, like, hung out to tell the tale. Except for, like, in the books, they don't really bring it. Well, he says it on the show, I think, but Euron Greyjoy, when we meet him, he says he's been to Ashai of the Shadow. So that's kind of interesting, you know, like, that could, and then there's the line about pirates, which... could also be a reference to Euron Greyjoy.
And the line about faceless men.
Yeah.
The thing
especially like when he shows up and kills his brother, which a lot of people theorize in the books it's going to be a faceless man. So I was like, oh.
Yeah. I think those are good connections. For the dragon class, very esoteric knowledge, I guess, but they talk about what Ashai is like in A World of Ice and Fire.
Oh, it's so good.
Coffee table book. I'm gonna call it a coffee table book.
It is.
Yes, and I love coffee table books. And yeah, dragonglass is basically like obsidian, which is a real world thing. That's like a volcanic glass and rock, and it kind of makes me wonder if like Ashai. They don't say it explicitly, but it might be around a volcanic area. Like it's close to a river called the Ash, and you know what happens from volcanoes? Ash. It's like by a bunch of mountains, and mountains obviously speak to potentially like I don't know, continental like tectonic plates against each other, and maybe there's a volcano. I don't know. It could mean that these are Baelish, or like maybe someone got it from somewhere because they understand that it has magical properties. It stands out. It does stand out, and it's cool that this early in the show we're getting hints that these are things that you should be paying attention to.
Yeah. I had no until I rewatched it. I had no idea. I didn't remember what she said or what they're like. I remember that they were talking about dragons and having sex, but I didn't remember like oh, I saw a man with this and a man with that and a man with this. And I thought, okay, well, it's really cool that in episode 4 of season 1, they're dropping lore. And they've dropped it like all throughout the first 4 episodes. There's been lore.
Yeah, I love it. And you don't think about it until you go back and watch it closely and you go, oh, and it's totally like Lyanna said, ground building. It's also interesting. This episode or this scene in this episode was actually filmed for the last episode that you did with Joe Magician, I think. But they moved it because of timing reasons to this episode. And the writer, Brian Cogman, wrote it, and he was unaware of the change until he saw the actual final cut episode. But it's just really interesting that they actually move some things around. There's a couple other scenes that they add to this episode later on we'll talk about. Because they just didn't have enough time filled in this episode. It was kind of like a filler lore episode.
Really?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like that
It doesn't.
It doesn't. There's so much that happens, but like literally 3 or 4 of these scenes were written at the last minute because they were just running short on this episode, and they filmed it in post-production reshoots. So they didn't even film these the scene we'll see with Sansa and Septa Mordain, the scene with Jaime and Jory, and the scene with Viserys and Arya. They were all last minute, like post-production reshoots. So they all got filmed after the season was mostly done.
You know what I like about this scene? Viserys almost seems likable, and then you're like,
yes.
He almost seems likable, and then you're like, oh God, Mad King. Like he goes from nice prince telling stories with the little lady in the tub to what did I pay you for? Like, what? Okay.
It's kind of like with Joffrey at the Trident with Sansa from the last episode. It's very much like the last episode with that when, he snaps and he's like, then go at Sansa. It's the same kind of idea, just that snap and that Mad King mentality.
Yes. Perfect.
It's totally great also just to get more characterization of Viserys. It adds a little more weight to what happens to his character later on.
Yes. So the next scene is Sansa and Septa Mordain. She's more angry with Ned than she is with Joffrey. She's like, I'm never going to talk to my father again, which is a very young perspective. And like, she's right now she's thinking about what if I only have girl children? Like that's where her thoughts are.
Well, and it's really sad because that's like what's being cultivated, that like behavior, and you hear from Septa Mordain right then and there. She's just like going off about, and then when you have your children, they'll do this, and you're gonna be noble, and blah 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 blah, and you're gonna be the queen and all this. And she's like, but she's also like being very like Septa Mordain. This whole show, like you have to think about, she's been teaching Sansa for years, right? So like Sansa's learning this stuff and how to be a lady from Septa Mordain, and some of the crap she says, she's like filling her head with crap, right? Like some of it is just like I get, she's trained to be a lady and blah blah blah, but some of the stuff Septa Mordain is saying is so old school, conservative, like how she's training her. It's very classical lady crap where this is a different world and they're not giving her the right stuff she needs. Like she needs a little harder stuff than that when she's going to King's Landing. I
agree 100%. I also think that Sansa spends more time with Septa Mordain than Arya does.
Mm-hmm.
Arya seems to be more around Assyrio or by herself.
Yeah, Sansa spends more time with Septa Mordain and Cersei in King's Landing as like her maternal figures. Like that's who she's with most of the time, and she only sees when Cersei's like being a gracious queen. She doesn't see like the bad stuff until when it happens to her. Like she's totally doesn't get subjected to kind of what I think she should have been subjected to. Her dad doesn't go to the court meetings, and like when like they're holding court, he doesn't go with her and afterwards say, okay, Sansa, let's talk about what you learned today at court. Like, did you notice anything from this? Like he doesn't give her any political advice or like help, and she's just like off on her own with Septa Mordain.
Yeah, we get kind of, I think in the last episode, we got that there is kind of a disconnect between Sansa and Ned. Like when Ned gives her the doll, it's like, it shows that he doesn't really pay attention to her.
So I would say like a couple of things. I think that regarding how fathers treat their daughters, I think it varies per person. Like Sansa's going through her phase of, like you said, I'm never talking to my dad again. And like, let's be real. Okay, maybe not everyone's gone through this phase. Have I gone through this phase? Maybe. And a lot of the other dads, they do speak with their daughters. And something that we've talked about in Girls Gone Canon is the way that Ned has internalized a lot of the things that have affected him in Robert's rebellion, and that causes him to very much withdraw from Sansa and actually interacting with her and dealing with the things that Sansa's going through. And I'm gonna let Chloe elaborate a little more on that. I just think that they're gonna be better at talking about this than I am.
Go for it.
Lyanna's like, she's sitting there just like, gotta let my girl do her thing. Here she goes.
My channel isn't used to Sansa love, so give it to him.
All right. Well, like, so when Ned, especially, we'll get that scene later on this season that we're gonna come to at some point. I'm sure you'll talk about where he sees Arya water dancing and his heart like kind of stops and he has like a PTSD moment, right? He stops, he like wavers, he's like watching it and he's already kind of having a hard time. It's toward the end of the season, so we know how things go for Dad. Not so good. But he has a similar thing with Sansa where Arya represents all of like the tough girl, tomboy parts of Lyanna that Ned loved, all the willfulness, like the wild wolf blood in her. But Sansa represents the things that got Lyanna killed, in his opinion, right? Like Sansa has a love for a crown prince. Her head's in the clouds. She loves songs and loves harpists. You know, I mean, she represents the Lyanna, which in the book there's a scene that we get where talking about how Lyanna dumped wine on Benjen's head at the tourney of Harrenhal because he was making fun of her for crying at Rhaegar's song on the harp that he played. Like, she was totally like half and half Sansa and Arya. So Ned can't handle that about Sansa. And he literally, after he kills Lady, there's this language in the story where it says he disengages from Sansa and like physically he moves away from her, but he also like just disengages from her after he has to kill her wolf. He just lets her go because he thinks she's going to be a lost cause. Like there's nothing he can do.
And I think that's absolutely going on in this scene because Sansa brings it up here in this throne room. She says, "This is where my uncle and my grandfather died, right?" And Septim Mordane's like, "Yeah, I guess I didn't teach you this." And I'm like, "What are we paying you for, Septim Mordane? If you're not teaching our children this, I don't know." But she's like, "Yeah, maybe you should talk to your father about that." And she's like, "I'm never talking to my dad again." But the fact that Ned's never spoken about this or hinted at it in depth with his children, like his children kind of know, shows that even Ned himself is so affected by this that he's not really ready to share it with the rest of his family.
I think that's probably the most amazing Sansa explanation I've gotten. I like that. The two sides,
baby girl.
Yeah, I like that. I'll take that. I got something similar from Joe where he was saying like, you know, Arya represents the North and Arya is more like home for Ned, and Sansa represents like everything Southern and King's Landing-ish where he doesn't want to be. So I like. It's
interesting though because Sansa is most like Ned. Like she trusts people too much, and she believes the best or that the people are going to do, you know, the right thing, and she believes in the honor system, and she relies on that system. You know, like him and her both rely on the honor in King's Landing, and it screws them both over.
Talking about trust, Ned is at a small council meeting. Janis Slint comes in and he's complaining about, you know, all the people coming in for the tourney. The gold cloaks can't handle it, and I just feel like Ned Stark just gives up his guards so easy. Like, I'm gonna give you 20 of my household guards. No, you need them. Like, you need to keep them near you. And I think Varys kind of gives a look like, what the hell? Like the camera pans to Varys and he's just looking confused.
He's looking straight at the camera.
Yeah, like, why is he giving up his guard just so easy and simple like that?
So I want to say it was, I'm not going to get their points exactly right, but Not a Podcast talked about this chapter and how Ned wields his power here. And Not a Podcast, while I'm here and chilling people, is by our friends Brendan Beefish and Poor Quentin, and they talk about how Ned isn't exactly even wielding his power as aggressively as he can here, and that he should be. He should be planting people everywhere all over in the gold cloaks. He should be putting his men all over and putting them in charge of the city watch, because that's what's going to give him power, like political power and actual like physical power over ruling the city.
Oh, so maybe Varys's look was, oh, he knows what he's doing. So maybe that's what that look was.
I doubt it.
We pointed out that Mace Tyrell does that when he comes in. He's like, I'm putting Tyrell people here and all these. And maybe like Ned just didn't come down to King's Landing with enough people. He didn't anticipate it, the situation requiring as much manpower. And also the North doesn't have, of course, as many people as the Reach does, because the Reach is so populous with all of its like vegetables
and fruit.
That's how I'm gonna put it. The vegetables. And Ned could have just been a little more aggressive, is what they were saying.
Yeah.
Also, you totally see, just like Gray was saying earlier about how Jon's going to be just like his uncle. We have Jon doing the same thing later on. You know, he sends his men away at the wall to go do stuff, and he sends all of his like allies away, and he's left surrounded by the swords of the Night's Watch in him at the end of season whatever.
Season whatever.
I don't remember. I'm drinking wine.
Yeah.
Whenever he died in this show we watch.
What is this? Who are you?
5.
See, I blocked that season out, so
Same.
I just know it happened.
I believe you. Season whatever.
Season whatever. Yeah, I'm a professional. Gray invited me on this podcast. I love this next scene we get with after the small council, at the end of the small council meeting, after he sends his men off. Not a good move. He like talks to Pycelle for a little bit. And Pycelle's the worst. Like, can we just talk about that? He's the worst.
He's absolutely awful. And right off the bat, he's trying to plant seeds against Varys. Right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, let Lord Varys. I don't know how he ever rose so high. We all know he rose high by whispering secrets to the Mad King and then to Robert Baratheon.
And because he's useful and does his fucking job.
Yeah, like literally that's his job. Like, you know who could be more useful? Maybe you, Maester Pycelle.
That's why he gets so defensive, because like when Ned asks him like, oh, so Jon Arryn was talking to you, and he goes like, but why? And Pycelle's like, because I've been here for a long time and I've a lot of experience. And Ned's like, no, not that why. I'm like, but literally, like, what was he asking you about? And Pycelle got super defensive. It's like,
yeah, he did.
I'm sorry, I didn't come here for a job interview. Like,
like who would talk to you? Like,
yeah, that's not what Ned was asking. He's like, no, literally, why though?
Yeah, just why? Yeah, that is crazy. But you know why he's defensive? Because he knew what happened.
But
he knew totally what happened. Knows. Yeah, he totally knows what killed Pycelle, what killed Jon Arryn, and he made sure that he died.
I don't know if he made sure.
I think,
but I do think he knew, like, that's what it was.
I think he has always served House Lannister, and he knew Jon Arryn needed to die, and it's better just to let him die and ease his path onto the Faith of the Seven, to go see the Smith and the Warrior and the Crone and whoever, and not heal him. Not gonna heal him. I might not know exactly what's going on, but I'm not gonna heal him.
You're telling me the old man of the river isn't waiting for me on the other side?
Pycelle's gross.
Yeah,
he's more gross, I would assert, in the television series than in the books.
Yeah.
I think it's
he
interesting.
just had that gross Sansa passage that we're gonna get to eventually.
Sure, but I think it's interesting that in the show they portray him as
lecherous.
Well, not just lecherous, that he's faking his frailty.
Yeah.
And I think that's very sneaky. And I kind of like that duality to Pycelle in the show.
So the next scene is a scene with Arya and Ned. And Arya is trying to stand on her tippy toes for hours, apparently. Because Syrio has told her that a water dancer can stand on one toe for hours. And she's like, Ned walks in and he's like, I think Arya is like Ned's soft spot, and kind of takes him away from all of the BS that he's dealing with. And when they sit down and, she's like, can I be a lord of a holdfast? And he's like, you'll marry a lord and have sons and they'll be knights. And she's just like, no, that's not me. And there was a callback to that in season 7, with the Nymeria thing.
Oh yeah, that's not you, not anymore.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So there's like all these ships of Arya and different people, and I just don't see it happening. I don't see her being anyone's lady.
What I love about this scene is the way that Ned says, "Oh, even though it was done post-production, I think that editing was really done well to put this episode together, because for Arya to say, giving birth to knights and princes, etc., that's not me, that's Sansa. That's such a great callback to the scene that Sansa was having with Septa Mordana, being like, but what if I give birth to only daughters? And Septa Mordana's like, no, you're gonna give birth to like a bazillion sons. And it does such a great job of connecting those two conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, even like their fears in that moment, that Arya's afraid of being forced into that life and Sansa's afraid of something going wrong in that life. Such different worlds. And it really feeds into when he has the talk with Arya and, tells her, like, look, I know you and Sansa hate each other right now, but you guys need to band together.
Yeah, I think it's a nice touch. I love all the Ned and Arya scenes. Love them.
Tyrion tells her that every hurt is a lesson and every lesson makes you better, and I kind of wonder if Ned necessarily agrees with that, because Ned's experienced a lot of hurts, as we've kind of touched on a little bit throughout this episode, and has it made him better, or has it just like really fucked him up?
On the wall, Jon has a new watch partner, and it's Sam, and we get Sam's backstory, and we find out how much of a douche Randall Tarly is.
In the actual books, you get a little bit more even than what you get here. Like, you hear like his dad basically like was trying to torture the coward out of him and crap. Like, literally, like he was like chaining him up like for days at a time, like just trying to make him like be a normal human. Like, it was just messed up. Like, he abused the crap out of him.
Didn't his dad like hire some sorcerers to come and like bathe him in goat's blood or something?
Yes.
Like, what the fuck, Randall Tarly?
I like Feast for Crows. Randall Tarly could not stand. Like the Brienne chapter.
Oh yeah.
I was like, Brienne, just kill him. Like, just kill him, get it over with.
He's a hashtag bad person. That's not a hashtag. He's a bad person.
And dude, like, he straight up tells Sam, like, if you're either gonna join the Night's Watch or I'm gonna take you out in the woods and have a hunting accident. Like,
yeah.
What is this? Like, who's gonna fucking believe that?
Right, especially his wife. His wife knows that he hates Sam, so
yeah.
Now
like,
that we've seen the rest of the Tarlys, who are great, I guess, like Sam's mother and sisters, we've seen them.
Right. How did they turn out like that?
Like, yeah, how do you turn out like that when you have to deal with fucking Randall Tarly?
Next scene is a Littlefinger scene, and like, First off, get a job, Littlefinger. Stay away from the Stark sisters. That's like the first thing I'd like to say about Littlefinger. I feel good now. That's all. You can go on.
So Littlefinger is basically trying to school Ned on the politics of King's Landing. And this is the most honest advice Littlefinger gives Ned throughout the entire series. This is the most honest advice he gives anyone. What he tells Ned, this is the Queen's spies. Those work for Lord Varys. That's mine. And Ned says, maybe I was wrong for not trusting you. And he tells Ned, not trusting me is the wisest thing you've done since you got here.
Yes.
And that was true. But he also drops like some juice on Sir Hugh of the Vale.
Yeah, and Sir Hugh just got knighted out of nowhere, and he's all like, really like, ooh, I wonder what that means, Ned Stark. Like, play my mind game.
Yeah, like, don't just I'm not just going to tell you everything that I already know. I'm going to make you jump through hoops and go through all these mazes to find out what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because then we get to the next scene, and it's the tournament scene, and Sir Hugh is like, a prime person in this scene to watch.
Oh my god, he's cringy.
Yeah.
So when Jory goes up to Sir Hugh and he's like, sir, and he's like, are you Sir who? And he's like, I'm not a sir. But this is like Jory, this is like where you realize like the Northerners aren't about that life.
Yeah.
They're not about that life. Like, because Jory could have been like, I'm the captain of the Hands household guard. Like, I don't care if you are a knight. Like, we don't have knights in the North. We don't follow the faith of the Seven. Knights are anointed in the faith of the Seven. Fuck your gods. Like, he could have just went hard. Like, Ned didn't have anybody that went hard. Everyone was just like going with the flow. Especially
because like the scene that we will talk about with Jory and Jamie, that scene. So he goes on, Eddard's investigating. He goes and he deals with Tobo Mott, and he meets Gendry, who is he realizes Gendry is definitely King Robert's bastard. And when he sends
Jory,
Jory,
he's a bastard and not a true one?
I don't know. I mean, he could be Cersei's kid, right, Gray?
Absolutely, 100% not possible.
Amen. Hallelujah, sister. Hallelujah, sister. Oh my God. Eddard sends Jory, to King Robert, and Jory like battles with Jaime Lannister. And like you said, Jaime Lannister is like someone on your side. Like you got Jaime Lannister, you're good in a fight. Which,
right.
This is what this scene kind of sets up, I guess. But Jory is like you said, he's just like, I don't got time for that. I'm not going to play your word game. I'm just here to get business done, man. Like, let's get it done. And Jamie's all like, here's some words, and I know politics. Like they're just two very different people.
Yes. And interesting. When I was watching it back, Jory says, we fought together at during the Greyjoy Rebellion. And he's like, I almost lost my eye or something like that.
Yeah.
And then in The Lion and the Wolf, Jaime stabs Jory through the eye. Like, so did they add that purposely? Was that like to taunt us?
Yeah, absolutely. This was set up for that. This was definitely set up for that. Because like I said, this is one of the ones that was done in post-production, So they probably were like, well, that works. It gives some setup for later on in the season. And they're like, let's do that.
Right, exactly. And at the wall, Jon talks to Gren and Pip about Sam. And they're like, nobody, like, don't beat up Sam in the yard. And Rask is like, forget you guys. The mean boy. He's like, forget you. Forget you guys. Like, I'm going to do what I want. And then Ghost pays him a visit. And basically Jon says no one touches Sam, and the bromance has begun. And we haven't seen Ghost since this episode.
Oh my God, we were so excited when we watched this. We love Ghost.
Yes, hashtag free Ghost. No, we've seen Ghost since this episode, guys. But it doesn't. Yeah, you don't even remember.
I don't know.
It's sad. They just leave him to the wayside. He's no one.
Which is very unrealistic. Who forgets their dog? Only a monster.
Yeah. If Ghost dies, we riot. He's gonna, but
no, he's not. Don't say that.
Oh my God!
I bet he's gonna die. All the dragons are gonna die, and Ghost is gonna die.
Stop.
All the direwolves are gonna die.
This? No,
all the direwolves are gonna die, dude.
Stop killing animals.
Except for like Nymeria. She'll
Why
probably
are you killing
live.
the animals?
Then Arya will die, and she'll live in Nymeria.
Oh my God! No. Everyone you're here, watch the dissolution of Girls Gone Canon.
No, she
what have I
wants
done?
to kill Ghost.
I don't want to, but they're gonna do it to us. They're gonna lay that on us, and it's gonna suck.
If they kill Ghost, I'll probably I'll call out the next day from work.
I'm gonna call out anyways, dog. If it happens, it's gonna be the last episode or some shit.
Like Ghost, Arya, Daenerys, Davos.
You probably should just take Mondays off. You should just take Mondays off for 6 weeks. I think that's what we should all do.
In the next scene, Viserys and Daenerys have a scene together, and the scene opens up and he's dragging the girl that he was in the bathtub with earlier in the episode, like across a field, and he's basically mad because Daenerys has invited him to supper and gave him gifts, which is weird.
Yeah, it's her flexing her like newfound like power and like her agency, you know? Like she's using her own agency and her own diplomacy, and like she's like, here, like, I think you probably want to fit in with our people, maybe they'll respect you more. I'm trying to be a good sister, but he's taking it completely the opposite, because like he's like, how dare you like try to have power over me of what I'm doing? Like, screw you. Like, who do you think you are? Like, I'm the boss.
Yeah. My favorite part of that scene is when he says, next you'll want to braid my hair, and she's like, you don't have a right to have your hair braided. Like, you haven't won any battles. And I'm like, okay, Daenerys is checking people left and right in this episode, and I'm here for it. So the next scene is where Sam and Jon are scrubbing tables and talking about getting Sally on the side. And there's so this is the scene. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, or if you've seen it. There's like Jon's talking about being a bastard, and then on the wall there's this R+L, or there's this RL just like nonchalantly carved into the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like that was Dan and Dave trolling R+L.
Oh yeah.
I think that was the R+L equals J clue. But to me, this scene kind of when Jon is talking about why he didn't bang Roz, or why him and Roz didn't hook up, basically it's because Jon doesn't want to have a bastard, because he doesn't think that he doesn't think he had a good life. And
I think he's also afraid of like doing the same thing his parents did, you know, like his dad Ned and whatever this common woman, whether she was a sex worker or, you know, just like lowborn, whatever. During this scene, Kit Harington, he was gonna jump over the table and hit Sam in the mess hall like during this moment, but he fell and he ended up like sliding across the table onto the floor during this scene. Like, so they just had to like, and the director was just like, maybe you should just shoot it like I wrote it.
Amazing.
Really?
Which like, it's kind of meta because they're both just sitting there like, we're fat virgins. So
yeah. And Sam is like a freaking perv throughout this whole thing. He's like, oh, red hair. Yeah. How was her boobs? Like, what did her boobs? What was
Kit Harington and John Bradley West, Sam's actor, they got stuck in the lift in Castle Black, like during filming this, because it suffered mechanical failure for like an hour or so. And like they called a nurse on set just in case they had injuries and stuff. Like there was a lot of mess ups. Like it sounds like Kit Harington likes to mess around on set is what I'm hearing here.
Oh, he's like a bull in a china shop. I wonder.
Yeah, he sounds like he's just really awkward and like just like John style, like, oops, I accidentally died.
Oops, I did it again.
Oh
I died.
Gosh.
Hit the wall.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Alistair Thorne busts in on him, and he starts to tell them about Winter. And he makes Winter sound really shitty. He's like, oh, we were on this ranging, and we ate the horses first. But when it got to the people, and I don't know, like, it makes Winter seem really creepy. And when he's telling this story, they have the White Walker theme music in the background. So I don't know why they had that in the background. I don't know, maybe just they bring winter, or they come when it's winter.
It's like they're by them doing this, it's kind of like it's reminding you the threat's going to be winter, and it's trying to explain to you just how bad winter is. And we see this with characters like Stannis Baratheon. He was in a siege, and it wasn't during like winter, but he was in a siege, and he basically like straight up, you know, he ate rats, he ate like the leather from shoes, like they were hungry, dog. So it like shows what happens when these bad circumstances happen. And it's kind of also interesting, and I'm sad that they didn't play on it more in the show, because Alistair Thorne, the big reason he's at the Wall is because he fought for the Targaryens during the rebellion. So he fought for Aerys and Rhaegar and their cause against Robert Baratheon. So Robert banishes him to the wall because he refuses to kneel for Robert, and he like hates Jon Snow, right? Like we're seeing this in these episodes. Like he is a dick to Jon Snow. He does not like Jon Snow. But like the irony of it all is Jon Snow is a Targaryen. Like he was such an a-hole to Jon Snow. Alliser Thorne was such a jerk. The big mean guy was such a jerk to Jon Snow. little cutie pie with his sad emo face. He was so mean to him. Yeah, but like he's the king, dog. He's the king. Like he's the king. You actually like he is Rhaegar, who you supported's son. Like
yeah, the irony.
They should have played on that. They should have played on that in the show, man, because that's like so crazy to me. Because Alliser Thorne isn't as mean in the books like as much as he is in the show, but he's so mean in the show, and I'm like, give him a reason, man.
He's so mean in the books. Like I think, as you and I know, that he survives in the books, and I think that irony is going to come into play. But
I think so too. I hope so.
So many people every season.
One of my favorite scenes in this episode is the tourney where Sansa meets Petyr Baelish. It's like the first formal introduction, and Septa Mordane kind of introduces them, and Sir Hugh of the Vale dies when he's going up against the mountain, and he probably shouldn't have died because I don't think lances are supposed to splinter like that. So why do you think he dies?
Because he's a fucking little fist at the end of his lance. It's the most extra thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, it was stupid.
I cannot. I wanted a real answer.
That was a real answer.
The fist.
Oh, you want like a smart one? You want a smart answer?
Is that like smart?
Do you think
that y'all noticed the little fist at the end of his lance?
No, I didn't.
Lyanna did.
Like, I can't believe that this is what he bought.
Well,
George has actually said like he doesn't know. Like he's never confirmed or denied. He's like, yeah, it could have been that, but also it could have just been like he died. And like you're just like it's like literally an interview he had, and he said that, and I'm just like, George, really? That's what you got for me, man? All right, whatever. I'm like, I guess it's not that important in the long run, but he more than likely was killed. Like it was like a intentional thing because he was, up jumped. He was spying for Liza, and he was like doing things for her, but then she left and he stayed because he wanted to rise up. So that like gives the idea he was looking like, for looking to increase his station. So who do you think was hiring, right? Like, I'm interested to know, was it Littlefinger that was like paying to get his station raised? Was it was he sucking up to Cersei? Like, what happened? No one knows.
I was wondering like if Sir Hugh died just because Littlefinger casually tells Ned about Sir Hugh, and then like Littlefinger's whole deal is to basically cause chaos and to make the Starks suspicious of the Lannisters. So let me tell him about Sir Hugh, and then let me just have Sir Hugh killed. Like I could
absolutely.
I can totally see like Littlefinger doing that.
Yeah, I could see that too.
Point more fingers at the Lannisters. But really, what I think is the setup basically for everyone's theory that Clegane Bowl is going down is Sansa gets the backstory on the Mountain and the Hound, and then the Mountain and the Hound, they don't duel here, but they duel in the next episode.
This scene was actually really big and elaborate in the script. It was a lot more like the scene from the book because Brian Cogman likes to write like that. He likes to write as close to the book as possible. He's been quoted to say, like, why mess with perfection? Why not just use what George has when I can? So I think that's cool. Yeah, right. But he, among the problems, it was like a really tight schedule and it was raining. So like, there were so many they couldn't do a lot of montages or shorts, and like they don't know how they even filmed this tourney, like because it was raining so hard most of the time. They had to find time to make it happen somehow, and they only had I think like 3 or 4 days to do it, and it was raining like every day. So Rory McCann wasn't available to film that scene when it was happening. Like he had to go at some point, like so that day or whatever when they finally got the scene, they ended up having Baelish say it.
I like that Baelish said it. I would have much rather have the actual book scene. So Cersei pays Ned a visit, and I feel like this is their first face-off. Like this is their first declaration of war, because Ned tells her, like, I've learned how to kill my enemies, and she says, so have I. And it just feels like a threatening conversation. Like the stuff that happened in the Riverlands at the inn at the crossroads, that was one thing, but that was kind of like, okay, this fight did happen. We're gonna see some high justice going on, whatever. But this more intimate moment just between Cersei and Ned, it seems like we're going to war. Because she basically is like, why are you even here? Like, there's a reason you're here. And we know that the reason Ned's there is to protect Robert. Ned doesn't want to be there.
And I love this scene because I think that D&D did a really good job of adding more Cersei scenes in the first season. I think that the interactions between Ned and Cersei are just so well done. And there's a really great moment as the scene opens that zooms in on that dagger that has been kind of the pitfall of everyone in this season and this show. And that interaction between the two of them, like, it's not even like something that's unique to this world, where Cersei's just telling Eddard, like, you're not going to be able to change Robert. And this is something that if we're going to be like really real and sad here, there's maybe someone and you're like, I'm not going to be able to change this person and make it better, but you're still there and you're like trying to be there for them.
Yeah.
And Cersei's telling him that you can't do that, and she tells him, and this is meant to be a jab, she's like, you're just a soldier, aren't you? And to me, this exchange and the way that Cersei tries to insult Eddard is similar to the ones that we've seen earlier in this episode, where, like, for example, Tyrion is making a jab at Theon, but because Ned's older, he's been in this game a little longer, he's actually gone through like shit, he knows how to respond, he has that power and legitimacy to be able to counter whatever attacks that she's making in this scene.
Mm-hmm. And he does jab back. And I like it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I do agree. I feel like Dan and Dave really love the actress that plays Cersei. I really love her. But
she's the best.
They give her tons of extra scenes.
Oh, yeah.
She makes the show, in my opinion. Like, I mean, I think that real talk in the books, she'll die before where we are in the show right now, but she's still kicking. Like, I think they kept her on for a reason. And also, this was actually, besides the pilot, this was the first scene filmed for the entire series.
Really?
Yeah, this was the very first one. So, like, that was that intense emotionally, and, like, they all, like, met on the same level that well in the very first scene filmed for the whole entire series.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah. Agreed.
I stand. I'm a Cersei stan, and not the
Same.
not the actual character, but the actual, like, the show character.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And everything. Oh my god, I think she's
amazing.
Amazing.
She's
amazing.
Very well done, and I can see why someone would want to keep her on.
Yeah. I don't want her to die until like episode 6. Just saying. So
I think it'll be episode 5, but we'll see.
Yeah, probably. Probably right after they deal with the White Walkers. So at the inn, Catelyn is there and Tyrion pops up. Tyrion meets Bronn. Bronn's like, you can have my room. But Catelyn takes Tyrion. She takes him. Do you think this was a mistake?
No.
I don't know.
I think she would have had to. Either way, if he saw her, like, what are you going to do? Like, that his family more than likely to slay against your kid. That your husband's investigating crap. You're investigating crap and stuff's coming up. This is your chance. He sees you. Like, you can't do crap and you're just like a lady that you can't pull your own sword out. So all you can do is, like, rely on other swords and hope for the best.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake. Catelyn, I felt like she didn't have to take him because what did she think was going to happen next? Like, she didn't have to explain to him where she was. And she's in the Riverlands. Like, that's where she's from. Her father is sickly. Like, if she felt like she needed to explain to him where she was, I was visiting my dad in Riverrun. Like, he's sickly. Whatever.
Yeah, that would have been, but I mean, that's the other thing is he literally, Theon just lied to her, or to him. You know, like, they set that up. Theon was like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. So, like, basically it would have gotten back that she was doing something, and then, like, as soon as, like, everything goes down with Ned, they gotta call the band. Like, I mean, it would really tip the Lannisters off to something. But I think that's the other big thing that I do think happened is she and everyone in this episode misjudged Tyrion. And that's a big, like, theme, that Theon misjudged him and was like, wow, you're a dick. And Rob's like, you're just a dick. And Catelyn's like, oh, there's that dick. You know, like, like everyone's just like, screw this guy, when Tyrion's like the one good one, right? Like, he's like, he's not good. I mean, none of them are amazing. They're all great characters. Great characters. They're great characters. But like, he, you know, like, he's not an a-hole, but that really also shows, like, what if you're a noble, like, what that means, what your last name means. Like, if you do something bad, it reflects on the rest of your family in this society. You know, it's not just like daddy's got to bail you out of jail, you know, like.
I think that's something that's so well organized about this episode. Like Chloe was saying, there's that idea that Catelyn wasn't there, but also right before this scene, right before us encountering Tyrion at the inn, we get that callback again. Like, the first thing that we see right before Eddard and Cersei start talking is that dagger that Littlefinger has pinned on Tyrion. So we understand in this episode that there are two conflicting narratives going on. That one, Tyrion's a nice guy who makes, like, cool saddles for people, and two, Tyrion's a person who has sent a cat's paw, who has sent this dagger against Bran Stark. So we have both of these, like, in our heads, especially with Littlefinger's information, and so we don't know what to. We as an audience kind of know what to think because we have seen Tyrion throughout all these different interactions, but Catelyn doesn't know that. Catelyn knows whatever information is associated with that dagger, and I don't know, maybe it was a bit rash, but I think she makes a call that she can with the information that she has, especially considering that in the previous scene, we see Ned and Cersei in an antagonistic moment where they're sparring against one another. So we see that they're at odds, and so, of course, Catelyn's going to react in the same way.
Yeah. I understand kind of why she did it, but I just feel like, what was gonna happen if you didn't take him? Like, she knows, I'm sure she knows, like, he's the worthless member of House Lannister. Not literally, but to the other Lannisters, like, he's the lowest Lannister on the totem pole. So if you didn't take him, what was it? What would have happened? That he would have went to King's Landing and said, I saw Catelyn Stark at the inn at the crossroads? Or, I mean, did he? I don't understand. Like, I just don't get why she did it, because I felt like, okay, once you take Tyrion, you have to answer to that from House Lannister. So I don't feel like that's helping Ned, like Ned's position and situation in King's Landing.
I would say that buys her time. Like, if you don't know, Catelyn doesn't know, right? She doesn't have the same information that we as viewers or we as readers have, that Tyrion isn't a total butthole, and that he actually is a decent person amongst his siblings, or, like, mostly decent, and that he didn't, in fact, send a dagger against her son. For her, she has to take Tyrion to delay the information that she has been on the road, and therefore in King's Landing talking with Ned about the situation with the Lannisters. And sure, it spurs the war, and Ned has to take it anyway, but at least it keeps them from knowing like what they're on to.
Mm-hmm.
And let's like also not forget, you know, like Littlefinger just, you know, stoked that fire. That's the other thing. I mean, that that Littlefinger visit where he's like, oh, well, I mean, you know, it's very serious what you guys are doing. You know, it's technically treason. Like, he plants this seed and he grows it. Like, all this dissent that Littlefinger is sowing is very important to pay attention to, too. You have to remember, you know, they just they feel, overwhelmed. Like, Catelyn's so overwhelmed. Her son just got crippled. She's trying to deal with kids, trying to deal with heading the house up. And now she is so, like, out of her mind, thinking that the Lannisters are after her family, which... Yeah. You know, in the end they are, you know, she's already stressed. So she goes to King's Landing. Littlefinger's like, oh yeah, you right. Like, they're after you. Like, by the way, you right. You right, girl. And he's like, by the way, I don't love you still. Hey, what up? But call me if your husband dies. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you get the sense from this episode that, well, it doesn't really pay off until the next episode, but you get the sense that Catelyn is more hip to politics.
Oh yeah,
like she's not like the typical northern, because she's from the Riverlands, so she's not like the Northerners where, you know, they're not really into politics like that. Mm-hmm. And when she says, you know, I charge you to take him back to Winterfell, but she says that, but that's not where she's going, which is very smart, and it shows that she's gonna be a political player.
That's her moment. You know, this is Catelyn's big moment where she reveals her aptitude in politics to us. You know, we didn't know before exactly what she's capable of. I mean, we know she's a Southern woman. We know, you know, that she has a little more experience than Ned, obviously. She's pretty savvy, but we don't know what she can do. And this scene is really her standing up and, you know, using everything she's learned as a highborn lady to call upon her father's bannermen, to call upon any other bannermen that could be loyal, and try to, you know, bring some justice around for her family.
Yeah. So I did like that part when she's like calling out all the sigils, like, that's the Black Bat of Harrenhal, like Red Stallion of House Bracken. Like, I like that. And I like that also because as a just like a casual show watcher, that also shows you that not only is Ned Stark like this high lord with all these bannermen, so is Catelyn's family. Like, Catelyn's dad also has all these people under like his banner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Not only did she marry into that, but she also already had that. She's a highborn woman. She's not just like, you know, a secondary woman that married Ned.
Right. And
absolutely.
I like that they make that clear. You gave me a whole bunch of juice on like this being like a lot of fillers and a lot of retakes, like after production scenes. I had no idea that any of that was going on. So that kind of puts new eyes on this things. And to think that scene with Cersei and Ned was the first scene shot besides the pilot is absolutely insane. But I kind of see why, because Ned and Cersei were like the two strong actor and actresses in season 1. But yeah. I think this episode is really good. It's really good setup for the next one, because I think the next one is amazeballs.
Well, and this is what got us all into that, right? Like, you know, you watch this episode and it keeps building up, and the rest of the season from here on out, the next 6 episodes are just like banger after banger, right? Like, you're just sitting there and you're like, dude, I gotta watch another one. Dude, I gotta watch another one. Like, you can't stop. So I think that's a huge testament. Season 1 is just a whole bop.
It was a great episode, and I want to thank you guys for coming on.
Thanks, Gray.
You're welcome. Let my audience know where they can find you at.
Yeah, you can find me, as always, with Eliana at Girls Gone Canon. We're on Twitter, on Podbean, on iTunes, Google Play, the whole 9 yards, Stitcher, and Acast. Did I say Acast? I don't know. We're on all of it, I guess. And I don't know, whatever season, right? Season 5, whatever season. Whatever season John dies in. And you can also find me. I'm on Twitter as @LiesAndArbor. I'm on Tumblr. I write meta-analysis on books and show. as Liza Arbor. And I also have a podcast called Drunk, A Song of Ice and Fire History. We're taking a little break right now, but we'll be back. And that's on YouTube and Podbean.
And because she's not going to do it, I'm just going to plug her a Chardane and Howland Reed theories. Check those out.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, man. Thanks.
Eliana, where can we find you?
Yes, and as Chloe said, you can find me on the who is life?
Oh my
As
God.
Chloe said, you can find me on the Girls Gone Canon podcast, and I'm also on Twitter as a Rhythmetric, and Gray Area is going to link that for you because I'm not gonna spell it for you. It's Friday, I'm drunk, and you can also find me on the Maester Monthly podcast, talking about any cool things that people have been talking about, any great news that's come out, and on the A Song of Ice and Fire subreddit as Glass Table Girl.
As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone that supports me on Patreon. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please click that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and join the sweet summer family. Okay, my sweet summer children, have a good day.
Shame.